Hello. Today we're going to look at a poem which definitely does not waggle the pom-poms to celebrate the all-conquering power of love. Jen Hadfield's Love's Dog presents a more balanced approach to matters of the heart. Now I'm sure that some brainiac somewhere in a university has written a lovingly crafted line-by-line exploration of this poem. But that's not what we're here for today. I'm going to have you in and out in about 10 minutes with enough knowledge, enough understanding of this poem to enable you to craft your exam responses to the highest standards. We'll kick off with an overview of the poem, a kind of summary of it, and then we'll analyse some language and some structural features, consider a few contextual factors, and then weave the whole thing together into top spec model essay. Here's the overview then. And Jen Hadfield has endeared herself to armies of English teachers and students everywhere by getting in and out in a mere 16 lines. Over 8 couplets, the poem uses a range of metaphors to present what the narrator loves and hates about the experience of being in love. The poem's metaphors involve objects and concepts not traditionally linked with the themes of love, such as washing machines, toast, and shiver me timbers, even pirates. So let's start winkling out some language techniques then. First off, we've got metaphor. As I say, this poem is groaning under the weight of the metaphors inside it. First 2 lines of the poem are here. What I love about love is its diagnosis. What I hate about love is its prognosis. Those words diagnosis and prognosis, these are drawn from the world of medicine. These are the kind of words bandied about by doctors and nurses in surgeries and hospitals. We're going to briefly clarify first the terms diagnosis and prognosis, because this will enable us to better understand what the poet's trying to say or do. Jen Hadfield says, what I love about love is its diagnosis. Well, a diagnosis, in medical terms, is when you identify an illness by looking at its symptoms. Well, what might the signs or the symptoms of being in love be? Well, I don't know, a lightness of heart, a kind of delicious fizzing sensation in your soul, wandering around with a big doped out smile slapped across your face. How do you feel? You feel great. Now, a prognosis is different. A prognosis is the likely outcome for a disease, and a prognosis can be good or bad. Jen Hadfield says, what I hate about love is its prognosis, which implies that love does not end well. What would be the prognosis for a condition like flu then? I guess you feel more dead than alive for a while. You wander around like a zombie. You'd be lashed in sweat. You'd just be exhausted, won't you? Then a couple of days, you'll feel better and the flu will go. Well, if Jen Hadfield is linking love to a disease and using words like prognosis, the implication is that love brings a lot of pain, lot of anguish, lot of hurt. Which brings us on to a structural consideration, because this poem employs a cyclic structure. You've got those medical images at the start, diagnosis and prognosis. You've also got the last line of the poem, which reads, what I hate about love is its sick parrot. Hence my cheesy cartoon on the right. And in the spirit of securing the highest marks in an exam, I've given 2 interpretations for this structural feature, the cyclic structure. First of all, as I suggested before with the medical metaphors, it's just suggested that love is a disease. It's a debilitating condition that's going to bring a lot of pain and anguish to life. Secondly, the idea of a kind of cyclic structure implies that you're sort of locked in a loop. And in this case, it's a loop of misery. It suggests love's always going to end badly. Pain and anguish will prevail. It's just inescapable, really. And perhaps Hadfield's pessimism here, her negative attitude, can be justified by the very high divorce rates in Western societies, particularly in Britain and America. It appears love does not always mean happily ever after. Perhaps that line, happily ever after, is best kept for the fairy tales. The statistics would say love doesn't last. So we've managed to forge here that contextual link so beloved of examiners these days, because we're linking Hadfield's attitude in this poem, which was written in 2008, her negative attitude or cynical attitude towards love, to the high incidence of divorce in the 21st century. And here's another structural technique. Anaphora. Oh, there's a word to startle the crows with. I'll be honest, until about 2 hours ago, I'd never heard of it myself. I don't know if it's pronounced Anaphora. I'm going to stick with Anaphora. And like a lot of la-di-da language, what it actually means is witheringly simple. It just means the deliberate repetition of the first part of a sentence in order to achieve an effect. And Jen Hadfield, as you know, throughout her poem alternates with what I love about love is, what I hate about love is. And I can assure you that if in the exam you forget whether it's anaphora, anaglypta or angina, it doesn't matter. Calling it repetition instead of anaphora is not going to mark you down as some knuckle-scraping simpleton. So anaphora, repetition, use those structural terms interchangeably here. And what this anaphora or repetition does very cleverly is it allows Hadfield to show what she sees as the duality of love, the fact that there's two sides to it. There's an aspect of love which ushers in great joy to your life. Equally, the moments when it's going to bring in grinding misery and despair. And we can bung in a contextual link here, because we could say that this very cynical or pessimistic, I would argue realistic, view towards love is a relatively modern one. Yes, English literature has often focused on the pain inherent in love. I mean, look at Romeo and Juliet, which Shakespeare wrote. Of course, true love never ran smooth. But I would argue that traditional love poetry serves to idealise or eulogise love or a lover. So it's a relatively modern concept in love poetry to explore the more monotonous or painful aspect of relationships. You know, because relationships aren't always about romantic walks on the beach or gondola rides on a mini break holiday. You know, sometimes there's festering resentment because, you know, she wants to watch the X Factor when there's a John Carpenter film on, or she goes nuclear because you bunged her delicate blouse in the tumble dryer, to give two random examples. I'll say this for Jen Hadfield: that girl can craft a metaphor. I love this one. What I loathe about love is its burnt toast and bone meal. No, it's loathe instead of hate here. She varies it for that one line. And we're going to focus on that phrase, bone meal, when we're deconstructing this metaphor and working out what the poet's trying to say or do or show. Now, bone meal is the gardener's friend. It's great for growing crops. And it's basically made by pulping animal bones, blood and gristle together to use as a fertiliser. As a metaphor for love and relationships, well, it's wonderful, isn't it? Very cynical, but wonderful, because it implies that love has the power to destroy us, to reduce us to nothing, to pulp our hearts into dust. So, we've looked at a few metaphors, we've looked at this anaphora, the cyclic structure, we've held these techniques to the light and thought about the effects that they have, how they operate in the text. We've also woven in and considered a few contextual features. We've thought about how the poem's cynical or negative or perhaps realistic attitude towards love and relationships is reflected in the West by the high divorce rate. We've also considered how her cynicism, that realism, that negativity, call it what you will, is in contrast, is in violation of traditional love poetry, which tends to eulogise or celebrate a lover or the theme of love. Now let's mash some of this stuff together and mould it into beautiful, beautiful paragraphs that'll have the examiner drooling like a hungry dog. So if the exam question asks me to analyse how a poem or a poet explores the theme of love or relationships, this paragraph could be my response. I'll read it through, then I'll lock in on the things that are underlined, just so we get a clear idea of why this is such a brain-bendingly good paragraph. Here we go. The poem employs a cyclic structure to present Hadfield's ideas on love. Medical imagery bookends the text with reference to diagnosis and prognosis in stanza 1 and a sick parrot in the last line of the poem. This powerfully conveys to the reader that love is a debilitating condition, something that has a draining, painful impact on the individual, much like a disease. Moreover, the cyclic structure suggests this truth is inescapable. Love will always end in pain. To the highlighted sections then, the underlined bits, let's see why it's so good. Well, in the first line, the point, I mention the poetic technique, cyclic structure. I've underlined present and love because I'm imagining the question here is something like, how does the poet use poetic techniques to present ideas on love? So I've woven into my point some key words from the question, so the examiner knows I'm not waffling and that I'm staying on task. My evidence comes next. This backs up my point. I've mentioned the diagnosis, the prognosis and the sick parrots. Incidentally, you'll see that phrase bookends, medical imagery bookends the text. Bookends just means it comes at the start and the end. I've mentioned in the explanation, this powerfully conveys to the reader. The example I'm with, Edexcel, forces students to evaluate language, and evaluative adverbs like powerfully, intriguingly, compellingly, powerfully, engagingly, these serve to judge the poem or cast judgment on the poet's craftsmanship. We also have to say, in our exam board, we have to be explicit about this and say that the effect is on the reader. It's not on the pigeons, it's not on a pack of biscuits, we have to be explicit. It's on the reader, it's to the reader. And I've said the effect here is it shows the debilitating condition that is love. You'll notice I've underlined moreover. I'm launching here into a secondary or a deeper analysis, and that word just signposts the examiner. I am going deeper. And here I just say that the cyclic structure suggests that this misery is inescapable. I've also written the follow-up paragraph for this response, looking at contextual factors, linking this poem to the era when it was written and to some of the conventions of traditional love poetry. Have a read. And here it is, the paragraph that follows on from that examination of the cyclic structure. Such cynicism is in contrast to conventional love poetry, which tends to idealise a lover or the experience of being in love. Given the high divorce rate in Western societies, a measure of love's limited lifespan, the poem captures 21st century pessimism towards relationships. And the first lot of red lines here, in the first 3 lines, are just linking this poem and its presentation of love to traditional love poetry and the values that promoted. The other red lines are linking that high divorce rate in the West in 21st century England to Hadfield's negative or pessimistic approach towards love. And here we are, folks. A kick up the bum, off done. Let's read the conclusion. Let's get out of here. The poem Love's Dog uses language features like metaphor, structural features such as anaphora and the cyclic structure to present that duality of love to the reader. Hadfield perceives love as bringing great joy and also great misery into our lives, an attitude that challenges the idealised concept of love found in many traditional love poems. Hers is a more pessimistic or negative depiction of being in a relationship with someone we love. Perhaps it's merely a more realistic depiction of love in the 21st century, reflecting the high divorce rate in Western societies. And we're done. As the Italians say, ciao bella.